Welcome to Busy Mom Talk, real talk for real moms. I'm your host, Kia, mom of two. So if you're juggling kids, coffee, and chaos, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode. Today we have Lauren Hurley from Nurturing Roots, and we'd love to kind of get to know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So I have been working in pediatrics for almost 20 years, which is just crazy to me. Most of my time has been spent, the last 15 years has been spent in as a developmental consultant. So I've really spent a lot of my time working with little ones, mostly under 6. I also have actually 3 children of my own too. So I have lots of knowledge that I get to apply at home as well that I've also learned through work, which my husband actually says can be a negative thing for him because he says you're always doing like coaching, you're always coaching me. So it has been helpful, and sometimes I feel like yes, maybe I know too much information, but I have spent so much time in pediatrics. I've worked within a hospital setting and as a developmental consultant within a children's treatment center. And newly, I have opened my own private practice. I'm supporting children with sleep, toileting struggles, as well as focusing on attachment-based parenting coaching.
Those are all amazing things. And I do think that a lot of times, like we bring our work home with us. If you work with kids or, like even things that you read online, or if you're super interested in these topics, like you go home to your partner and be like, this is what we have to do, or this is what's going to work, right?
Absolutely. And then you try it. You think, okay, no, this isn't going to work for my child, or it is really successful. So it is definitely helpful to have different avenues of supports, or like you said, research. There's so much out there now that can be really helpful because you can't know it all, right?
And it's hard too, because I think that there's so much research. It's hard for parents to grasp what's actually going to be helpful. And a lot of times too, like I think there's this idea that sleeping through the night at 3 months old or 4 months old means you're sleeping 12 hours. But I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's like your baby sleeps consecutively for 6 or 8 hours at that age, right?
Yeah, and every child really is different. Some can sleep by 8 weeks through the night, believe it or not. That's just it really comes down to it. And what I tailor my supports around for families too is it's custom to the temperament of the child, but also to the parent, right? It's about the parent, what they're ready to support their child with, how they feel about it, their parenting styles. So if baby is sleeping that much throughout the night, or longer stretches as they go, sometimes you'll see that by 8 weeks they're sleeping 8 hours. By 9 weeks it's 9 hours. It can be really dependent on the child, but sleeping through the night, if you're getting over 6 hours at that stage, that's a good stretch. And then a feed and back to bed.
And I think that is so unclear to parents, as they don't know what these terminologies mean. And they also don't realize that if a baby's just waking up to feed and going right back to sleep, that's still like considered connecting sleep cycles, right?
Yeah, if they're having longer stretches, longer than 30 to 40 minutes, then they're connecting their sleep cycle. So once they've transitioned at that 4 month, where you see that big 4 month regression sometimes, they've transitioned over to an adult sleep cycle. And then every 30 to 40 minutes, just like us, we go through the cycle. And if they're sleeping longer, then they are connecting their sleep cycles together.
So the one thing I would love to like kind of pick your brain on. So when we look at children who are neurodivergent compared to other children per se, like do you see differences in their sleep than other children?
So I do see in my work as a developmental consultant within a children's treatment center, I was seeing a lot of children who had autism or diagnosed with autism or suspected autism who had struggles with sleep. Now, I did not have a certification in special needs and neurodivergent population, so this is newer to me. So I'm super excited, especially for my private practice, but also within a children's treatment center, to support families because their sleep is different. You will hear parents that say their children are awake most of the night. If you can believe it, hours. So you hear these stories of neurotypical, say, children who are up throughout the night several times. But then imagine if you're up several times a night, but you're up for an hour and a half, 2 hours every time. So there definitely is a difference from my perspective, from my experience. However, now with this training that I have so many tools in my toolbox to support these families. Like, I can't wait to get started.
So when somebody comes to you and they say, these are the signs that I've been seeing, I think my child may be neurodivergent or they're showing signs of it, what would be the first step that you would say to these parents?
Well, if they were coming to me in my private practice, I would, so because I have a background in development, I cannot assess a child. That is not in my scope. However, I can complete a developmental screen with them in a variety of screening tools to see if there are signs that verify and affirm the parent of their concerns. And if there are, then I always suggest like referrals out to a family doctor to make a referral to a developmental pediatrician.
So we did do a little question box of like asking our followers if they had any questions to kind of see what their opinions or questions that they would have. And somebody did say like, what do you say to somebody who doesn't have the resources or the financial means to go private? Like, what do those wait times look like? How do they kind of manage in the meantime, especially because a lot of times they can age out of programs, which I wasn't even aware of.
Yeah, that's tough. That's a good question. The wait list right now, so in, Kingston, Ottawa area, I'll speak to specifically more Kingston. The wait list can be 13, 14, 15, 16 months, depending for an autism diagnosis specifically. I'm talking. That's a long time. However, my role within that setting as a developmental consultant, often I see these children come in very young because our program is zero to school entry. I see them come in, they have no diagnosis, and we are often the first people to say to them, do you have concerns around, the following? And if the parents are like, yes, I never knew, then really our treatment and support for them doesn't change if they have a diagnosis or not. If we're supporting them with whatever their concerns are as a family, whether the child has received it or has not received it or waiting, they're still going to get supports. That's just specific in the public sector. But to get a diagnosis and then Autism Ontario and the money and all that stuff, yeah, that's differently because we're a free government service. But you're right, the money does run out eventually.
Yeah. So, like, what are those signs kind of aware to the parents? Like, is it just sleep, you would say? Is it like delayed milestones? Like, what are the things that you're asking them?
Yeah, absolutely. It can be variety. And because it's a spectrum, it looks really different because there's mild, moderate, or more severe. Some of these children we're seeing that don't have any communication yet, or they're not gesturing, or they're not seeing some of those early signs of communication. So that's definitely an indicator that we're looking at. And as well as maybe you're seeing repetitive behavior that they possibly could have grown out of at that point, developmentally kind of progress, but they're still doing something repetitive or restrictive behaviors. Sometimes you can see children who have gross motor delays that is also connected. Sleep issues, like you said, that's also connected. There's generally a lot of like GI issues as well with children who are, say, going to be or potentially diagnosed with autism also. So it's intricate for sure.
I was definitely like shocked when I heard that there's such a correlation between GI and neurodivergent, which it's not shocking really when you think about it because gut health plays like a whole role in our whole body. But it does seem that it would be super hard for parents, especially because so many doctors have the waited out approach, which I think is great for some things, like medically like talking. But when you look at those wait times, like they're super, super long. It's not like you're just waiting a little while. And usually you don't get that referral until they're older, right?
Absolutely. And we hear that all the time. Let's wait and see, especially if it's a boy, it seems. Like, oh, they're just a boy. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. They're not ready to communicate yet. They're a boy. They're going to be later. That is not true. So I always tell parents if your doctor has advised that, you are your child's best advocate. Keep going. Keep going back. Go see someone else who can refer you. because we see that all the time, unfortunately. And it's tough. And I think that's what I like about being private too, um, is that parents just come to me and I can get them what they need. I can do what they need. They don't have to have a specific referral to get the supports that they are waiting for someone to refer them to, you know?
Yeah. I think it's hard though, because there's just it like I think COVID really, really did a number on the system. So those long wait times, they just got even dragged out longer. And I think that it's probably like, I don't know, because I've never been in this position, but it's probably sometimes like hard for parents to accept a diagnosis, and not even just neurodivergent, just kind of anything. Like I know with my son, when he was diagnosed with like C. difficile or other things, I was like, what do you mean? Like, how did he get this? How does this happen? And you have so many questions. And I don't think that there's like enough answers, because every child's so different. And I think that with parents, like, there's not enough support when you're going through these complex things.
And I think it is really important for us as clinicians and supports to the family when sometimes it can be just me that's in their life and they've received this diagnosis. They haven't been connected because their child's younger or they just don't have other connections yet. They're on wait lists still. And it can be really, really hard for parents to hear that, to accept that. There's denial. Like you have to sometimes go through those stages of grief because there's this dream that you had for your child, this baby you have in your belly, and then your child's born and someone's telling you something that's hard for a parent to accept. I mean, I get it.
I think that it's super interesting too, because like, would you say there's a lot of support for family that it's just not a resource? Because like going through the conversations of like moms who've gone through trauma and stuff, I've realized now how much support is out there. We just never had the tools to access it, and no one's saying, hey, look, here's a handout. Here's all of the things that you can access. And these are the resources that are free, things that you can pay into, things that are a lot of money. Like, is that kind of the same thing that you would say for parents with children that have complex needs?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's hard to say, like, I'll just speak from a private practice perspective. My job is to make sure everybody knows about me, or as many people know about me, that this resource is out there, especially um with the toileting struggles. There's a huge gap. There's a huge gap. Once someone finds out who I am and what I do, they are they're starting to work with me because they've said, I've been looking for this resource. So I think it's so important that we should be getting out there as much as possible. Even a bigger agency, they need to be sharing what they do and the resources that are available in the community for families.
Because I think too that a lot of times that parents, they don't know about things, right? And it's like, where do I look for it? And we kind of said this earlier too, is that there's just so much information out there. We don't know what's true, what's factual, and everyone has their own opinions on things, right?
Absolutely. There's so much information on the internet. And, I'm a mom of three, so I'm not surfing the internet as much as I say once did. But I remember with my first, and especially with sleep, because I wasn't as well versed at that time, I was always picking one resource of someone I felt very trusted in the sleep industry, and I would only take that person's information because there is so much and it's conflicting information. But if you find someone or something that feels good to you and feels aligned with you as a parent, I always say just stick with that. Don't look for 20 other answers.
And I think that's what's hard is like society deems it for us to have like this perfect child or this perfect relationship with your child, or like if they don't do this, this means that they're delayed, or if this they don't do this, like that just means something more is going on. And I've heard this so many times where parents are like, my child won't sleep, what's wrong with them? And I think that when you look at the whole picture, like I am so big on this. Like when people tell me their kid doesn't sleep, I'm like, have you got their iron tested? And I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't tell people to like give their kid iron. I definitely don't think you should. You need to go to a doctor, get assessed and stuff like that. But that's what made me realize there's so many more things to sleep and sleep training and anything sleep related, that there's so many different issues that could play a part than your child just doesn't know how to sleep.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. There can be lots of different avenues of what's going on and correlations of in the environment or other things. I agree. I like to go to like holistic approaches and other modalities. first if I can. And I think, and I bring that into my supports with families. Even if I have like a young baby that comes in with a mom for sleep, like let's bring in an LC. Let's bring other people in who are experts in this to see if there's something else going on, or their doctor. Exactly. If you said, is there a nutrient concern or something? So I agree. It's not just like one approach is the only approach.
Yeah. And I think that it's so important to have like a wide range of providers than just going with one person. I mean, unless one person's working for you
Yeah,
and they're like kind of, it's very hard to find somebody who's trained in everything, like,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it's nice to pick and choose. And I always say to my families, take what resonates with you and like block out the rest. If it doesn't feel good and align with you, don't take the information.
so when you're working with children who have toileting struggles, let's say, like what would you say their parents are coming with you asking?
Yeah, absolutely. I've found recently, especially families have been struggling, not for a month, not for 2 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, struggling with this challenge. And I will say, as a parent of a child who struggled with withholding for 2 years, it's a very lonely place. And I think there's so much fear and anxiety related to this for these children that the number one thing I say to parents to start off is you have to take the pressure off of completing this. So much anxiety comes to our children, and we unknowingly are putting it on our kids. Like you're just trying to do the best you can with the resources you have. That I think like the number one thing I always say is you have to take the pressure off, and then we have to use a holistic approach to support your child, and it has to be child led with the parents, right?
I think that's the biggest thing is being child led. And again, society places these norms, like even with kids going into JK. I've seen so many posts on like mom groups and stuff being like, my child needs help still. Like, why can't teachers help? And, like it is hard because there's only one teacher in like a public school. But how do you support them in saying that, like, if you take the pressure off, things will get better?
Yeah, and I think too, especially if you're talking about JK, a lot of my families right now are saying several, actually, most of them are in the States. So their schooling system's a little bit different, but they are saying our child is starting, pre-K or whatever it is for them in September. I need you now. We need help now. That's two of my clients for sure in that stage. And it's a lot of pressure because it's like, who's going to help my child at school? And it is when you say take the pressure off, I say to parents, here's a list of the things that you probably have done because I know I certainly did them as a parent, comparing your child to others, threats like, hey, if you don't do this, I'm going to take your pull-up away, something, those things, bribes, rewards, all those things. But what we need to do is we need to build our child's confidence and self-esteem. We need to let them know that they're capable of doing these things on their own. To touch on the struggles at school, that it's hard. Like you have to have a plan with your school system. And being in JK, yeah, when there's maybe not an ECE in the classroom or someone else, then I think it's really important to have like a plan where the child doesn't feel different for this happening.
When you are supporting these families, what kind of things are you suggesting to build their children's confidence?
We need to let these children feel like we are controlling their everyday. Always, right? Scheduling, school, daycare, here's supper time, here's this, here's that. They have control over their play, and children can also just control their bowels, their food intake, and their sleep. But when we're controlling everything else, that takes a lot away from a child's independence, you have to think. So I always coach parents on building their independence, making them feel confident about who they are. And like daily affirmations are so important for anybody. And that's why I love them. I always say to my parents, you need to have daily affirmations, and your children need to know these things. They need to believe these things. And they're not just to be applied to toileting, but to also everyday life, right? So I'm definitely about that, supporting them to build their confidence, letting them feel comfortable around being in the bathroom. What does that look like? Bathroom environment is so important So it's really important to have the child a part of everything, and you're not the one telling them what to do. You're just leading them to support them.
I think too is that people say that your child's potty trained in the day. They don't realize that it's like a hormone. I believe it's a hormone that you get in your body for bedwetting. And you can't train your children to not pee during the night.
It's your choice as the parent. It's your child. You can do whatever feels good for you, but from a professional perspective, you don't have to wake your child. It also is disruptive to sleep, right? They need to sleep all night. So I don't make that suggestion. I say, just like you've said, like when their body's ready, they will start to hold it all night long. And I actually know some kids who have had to take medication to, like you said, trigger that hormone. Oh, I need to hold, like, this is what I need to do. So that happens too for some kids that are getting older and they're feeling that because they understand it in a different way, right?
Yeah, I think too the society part of it, right? Like there's just like even going to the bathroom in public. I know a lot of people who withhold it and they refuse to do it. Or, like even for myself per se, like when I was pregnant, I had a antibiotic resistant UTI that I was hospitalized over 4 months. So I was like, I will not pee in public because germs. And it's just hard to like retrain your body and retrain your mind, especially when you're a child. You don't even know these things. You don't understand how it works. And like even withholding, like I know that when you deal with constipation, that like doctors tell you don't put pressure on toilet training. And there's like this idea for some reason that like you need to start doing potty training at like 18 months or, like have you ever heard of elimination communication?
No.
Okay, so I've seen this on Instagram, like from like mom influencers or even just people I follow, where they put their child on a potty from a young age so that they can get the correlation of this is where you go to the bathroom. And when it works, but they still wear a diaper all day long. They just kind of train them or whatever. And it's like a informal or no pressure form of potty training. You're not leaving them there to pee or poop like for hours or even minutes or whatever. Just kind of maybe when the big brother or big sister is going to the bathroom, you say, "Oh, do you want to sit on the potty too?" Or you kind of get them comfortable. And at first I was like, this seems bizarre. Like, what do you mean you're putting your 6 month old on a potty? And then now when I'm thinking about it, now that I have two kids, I'm like, this makes so much sense because you're getting them comfortable with it. You're showing them things or you're just getting them used to the idea of something that's not you're going to the bathroom in your diaper and that's it.
Yeah, and I think, and I mean, I have heard of that as well. Maybe not known the name for it, but um, I think it's really just about exposure, right? It's about exposure, and I can say, as a mom of three, my third, who is now almost 15 months, he is like obsessed with the toilet. Why? Because his big brothers have this really cool toilet seat with the steps, and he watches them go up it, right? So sometimes at bath, absolutely, I'll say, do you want to sit on the toilet? He has no idea what I'm actually saying, but I will just sit him on it right after his brothers right before bath time, and he thinks it's so hilarious. He's so excited. He's so happy. I have absolutely no expectations. It is just about exposure. And until I say to my families and information I share, there's certain readiness criteria that I say is usually important to have before you're actually going to do like potty learning for your child. Because otherwise, like you said, like if they're truly not ready, it just becomes resistance, power struggle, and more issues.
Yes, and even like I've seen online or people say like you just don't let them wear a diaper for 3 days. And I just think like, what do you mean? Like, I mean, to each their own. If that works for you, great. Like, I'm not talking down or whatever on any form of whatever people want to do, but like I don't think I could ever do that. And there's just so much pressure, I think, around certain things that it's hard as for my parenting style specifically that I don't think I could do that. And having people tell me to do that, I just started lying, being like, when my son was like 2 years old, I was like, yeah, he's potty trained, like fully potty trained. And, because I was like, what do you mean? I just don't let him wear a diaper for 3 days.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I can speak to that method because I did do it with my second. I did not with my first, which is interesting because I've learned so much. And then I also got certified because I wanted to learn more. But my first is just, he's so different that I don't think that approach would have worked for him anyways. But my second, was just after he turned 2, and he was showing so many readiness signs. But because I think he had an older brother, it was so different, right? He was saying all the things, and I'm like, I don't know. I think he might be ready. I was shocked. I was not expecting it. We were not pressuring. I said, well, let's give it a try. Let's try this naked 3-day plan. And because I was certified, I had a whole plan I could do. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try it. And it was very successful for us. He loved it. It was no power struggles, nothing. Were you chasing him around in like high stress and anxiety yourself because you're like, where's there going to be pee in my house? But you know what? We just set some rules of where you can be and what you can do. And it was really easy for us. But again, I think it comes down to temperament of the child and what feels right to you as a parent, right? If you're
Yes.
like, that doesn't feel good to me, don't do it. Find what feels good to you and just take that route.
Yeah, I totally think the temperament thing is even my two children, they're so opposite from each other. And like with my son, I knew that would not work. So I just eventually was like, you know what? I'm just gonna tell people that. And we just kind of he just eventually potty trained himself, I would say. Like he just stopped wearing, yeah, like I don't think I could say there was a specific time where I was like, okay, he's potty trained. And it's funny too, because my partner would be just so nervous, like long drives. Oh my God, he's gonna be soaked when we get there. Or like, but it's hard to trust your child when you know that they haven't had an accident or, and then you get this power struggle. I'm not wearing a diaper. I'm not a baby, because he has a little sister. He's like, what do you mean? That's for babies.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, again, you probably saw all those readiness signs in him. So you're exposing him and you're like, hey, there's the potty or there's the toilet. When you're ready, go sit on it. And that's amazing that it worked so well for him. I think that's great. And then there's no pressure for you where you felt like you had to, meet this criteria yourself of, oh, he's this age, he has to be going.
Yeah, like I wonder why there's such like a society pressure of it. Because like for example, my grandmother was like, "Oh, we just like did it. No one really talked about potty training their kids or no one talked about is my kid potty trained? There was no competition. Your kid was just potty trained or they weren't." Like nowadays, I feel like it's such a competition in a society pressure, not necessarily like between friends or whatever. Maybe there is, but
Yeah. I will say, like, between friends, I've never felt that way for sure. But what I will say as a parent of a child who did really, really struggle, I think he could have stayed in a pull-up forever because he was just so content. I will say personally, it really, really bothered me that I couldn't get him out of a pull-up, that it took so long. And that's why I did that. And I'm like, I've worked in pediatrics for so long, but I didn't have enough of that skill base specifically, which is why I got educated. I got certified. I worked with a coach. I just felt that personally as a mom, like, why can't I do this? And I get it. I get that pressure of like, oh, here's my almost 4-year old in a pull-up at an event with other kids all in underwear. Yeah. So you do feel that.
it's wild to think that this is what is going on between moms because I've heard before that there's this thing where people don't judge children or whatever, but you still feel judged when people are looking at you like I personally don't really love when my kids sit on tablets at restaurants, but I also will let them be kind of feral and people probably stare at me because they're like, get your kid together. But I'd rather go through the hardship of kind of teaching them at a young age how to act or whatever. And I do feel judged, even though I don't want to feel judged. But then if like you put them in front of a tablet, then you have people staring at you like, oh, they're just going to sit in front of a tablet all day at dinner. Like there's just such a negative connection between children, motherhood, and I honestly hope that one day like moms don't feel that way.
Absolutely. I agree. I'd be really nice to not feel that way as parents or just other generations judging us. I'm sure you've experienced that too, right? I think so much of social media sets that tone, really, because you see all these things and all these expectations and my child does this or my child's doing that, but you're not like looking behind the scenes of what's going on. And same as you, when we go out to restaurants, I do not bring technology. I never have brought technology. And I see the parents who have technology and I'm like, maybe they got a good thing going because they're actually enjoying their meal. And I don't think I've sat in a like pleasantly enjoyed a meal with all my kids because it's so busy. But I'm the same as you. I think it's rooted in you have a family meal, you have a conversation. This is something special. So I really will say, and being in my late 30s now, that the younger me would have felt or has felt judged and like I wasn't doing it right. Now that I'm older, I honestly can say, I don't really care anymore. It doesn't matter to me. Judge me all you want because you never know what's going on behind someone's door, right? And I think that goes for everything, especially like postpartum, all of it. I just think it's so important that if you don't want to be judged, don't judge.
And that's the one thing, like, I feel like since I've moved to Ottawa, I found such a great group of friends that are moms, and we all do things differently. And, like, I think once you get that little group or even that one friend per se, it makes things so much easier because, like, maybe we do things differently, but our kids are still happy and they're still healthy and they're still thriving. And it makes our lives easier when we do it our way opposed to other people's, right?
For sure. And it just feels better to you. And it takes all kinds of kinds. That's what I always say. There's not one person or one way that is right. And I think that's too what we see, what in my experience say, and I've heard other moms say this too, is like the other generations, the older generations, there is questions around why would you do that? We didn't do that. And I'm like, well, times have changed. We've learned a lot about safe sleep. That's a huge one for sure. The sleep conversation is huge. No one ever talked about their sleep issues, you know? So it's interesting. Times change, and I love now that we are so much more open to sharing information and getting help. And it's okay to get help.
Like, I would love to know your stance on, do you ever see clients coming to you with issues regarding kind of anything, even sleep, toileting, temperament, everything? Do they try to ask you, how do I relay this information to my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my parents, old generations in my family, my caregivers? Like, do they ask those things, or is that not really something that you see?
I would say sometimes we do see that. Or if you know, like my mom said I was that way and it was fine. Or, so there is some of that. And I do always try, and it's about also really empowering the parent and making them feel good about what they truly believe and validating that these are feelings are true. I think that sometimes what really gets missed is like we encourage parents to validate their children, but also you need to be validated, whether it's by me as a professional or by when your family doesn't validate you because they have different views. I think it makes us question ourselves, right? Makes us question ourselves. So I just think it's really important for parents, moms say, to feel feel what you feel and be strong in your conviction. And you have to stand up for yourself when it comes to your kids. Like elbows up is what I feel, and maybe you weren't that confident before you had kids and you wouldn't speak your truth to your parents or your mind, but now that you have kids, it's like nothing stops me from saying what I need to say about my kids. That's how I feel and what I try and coach my families.
Well, I'm really glad you have that perspective because I think I actually just posted about this recently that with my son, when I was a first time mom, I was not confident saying, don't kiss my baby. I was not confident saying, do not do that with my baby. I'm not confident with this. And I was not comfortable with it either. And now with my daughter, I was like, I am so comfortable. Like, I will burn bridges. I will scream from the rooftop, like my way or no way. And I mean, it is hard in some stances. Like, I come from an Italian family. Like my grandfather still doesn't understand why he can't kiss my babies, but like it's also for his protection too, right? Because he's 94. Um, but you just think about different ways of parenting and kind of how it's alternated, shifted. And I think it's hard because there's so much new research and things that are actually researched now opposed to before. They were just kind of a myth and there was a commercial on this and now everyone believes it, right? So it's kind of hard to know what's factual, what's true. Um, but what's one of the most common things you would say that you see with the families you work with, both in the private sector and the public?
I would say so for the public sector. I started as a developmental consultant when I was 19.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that crazy? I was 19 years old and I was seeing a lot of family where I lived at the time. I was seeing a lot of families with low SES, socioeconomic status, and it was very much a learning curve for me at 19 years old. I didn't really have a lot of experience with children who have autism. Fast forward almost 20 years, I am seeing a lot, most of my caseload in the public sector is children with autism are coming through. Not as much children who are showing a delay. We still see those children as well, work with preemies as well, but that's who I'm supporting the most in the public sector is children who are neurodivergent or suspected neurodivergent at that time. And then in my private practice, I have I do lots of sleep coaching, but I am really seeing more children come in with poop struggles, withholding struggles, constipation struggles. And I find that like I said earlier, when families know what I do, they get on a call with me, I tell them about what I do, what my approach is, and they are booking packages with me because there is such a gap in service for that. And when you find someone who aligns with you, you've been going through this for 2 years, so you don't have much to think about. You are just so happy you found someone who knows what you're going through. And I mean, because me as a mom, I went through this. I feel like people just really feel that connection and want to move forward and want my support. So those are the families I'm supporting right now.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. And I think that it's such a niche thing that you do that I'm sure doctors aren't recommending, oh, go find a developmental consultant that has specialty in toilet training. And, like even some nurses I know, they do that kind of stuff. Like it's just not something that you know about. Honestly only found out about this type of work. I think it was like a couple weeks before I met you. And we had a call because it's not something that people are talking about. It's not something that moms are able to just get access to information on. And this is why I think that it's so important that these conversations keep happening and people are realizing that there's so many tools out there. And it sucks because you do have to look and kind of be a little nitpicky on where you go and how you get the information, but they are there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say in our time with my son, yeah, do you want to know our recommendation? Our family doctor was not sure, like didn't know how to support us, referred us to a pediatrician who specializes in like GI. And the recommendation was put him on Restorelax. So we were on Restorelax on and off because I just felt in my gut, this is not the problem. This is not the problem. And it was like back and forth. Like you said, I was researching, I was doing so many things. And it's just like, this is not working until I really took it into my own hands. I think it was after seeing the pediatrician, maybe the second time or even the third. I'm like, that is not the answer here. And once I shifted my perspective of like, what is actually going on, we took him off Restorelax before we started this new approach, and he doesn't even actually need that. Doesn't even need it, right? And I just feel like they are doing, from a pediatrician perspective, they're doing what they know medically, what they know to be true for them and their approach. And that's wonderful. It was great because I didn't know a lot about that at like PEG at the time. I do now, but there's also another way to this. You can't just that wasn't helpful.
See, I find that I've been super lucky because my family doctor, he also does acupuncture. His wife does Reiki. His son's a chiropractor. His daughter-in-law's a naturopath. So he definitely knows there's a time and place for Western medicine. And I'm sure none of us want a Dr. Google surgeon operating on us, right? But we also don't need all of these medications that also have side effects, or, even like I didn't know that you shouldn't be taking, like giving kids multivitamins if you don't know if they're deficient in anything, because some vitamins can be fat soluble and you can get too much and there's toxicity. Like there's just so many things that I think everyone kind of has to do what they feel is in their gut, but also when things feel wrong, it's okay to say no to the westernized medical world, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it, especially when it comes to doctors, parents are very intimidated. And I say, absolutely, I get it. I validate that that feeling is true, but they're also just people and they only know their specific field. They don't know all these other things, you know? So you're your best advocate for your child, always bottom line, end of story. And I think parents need to remember that always.
Yeah, but that my doctor said to me, the best doctor for your child is you. And when he said that to me, I was like, what do you mean? I'm gonna go Google this stuff though. But that's what I'm thinking. I'm gonna go Google this, right? And when I Google it, it doesn't look very promising. So I'm bringing him to you because you obviously know more. And in my heart, I knew things weren't just normal. But as we kind of went and didn't take a medical perspective, things got better for so many different things. So I do think that there is a time and place for Western medicine. So what would you kind of say, like a parent who's struggling in the deep end of toilet training, sleep training, behavioral issues, like what would you say to these parents to kind of give them a little bit of hope?
Yeah, I would, for accessing coaching support, I think it's really important. You as the parent, them as the parent, they have to be ready to take that next step because it is a commitment on their part. They have to be at a place that they feel like I am ready to do this. I'm ready to be supported by someone else. And they need to know they're not alone. And it's not just like paid services. It is not just about that. If you visit, my page or say other people who do different modalities, there's always lots of information out there. And following someone specifically, per se, if you're in line with their coach or their approach, I think that you're not alone and just reach out. Don't feel intimidated. I think a lot of parents too feel shame around, like, let's say about toileting, feel shame that they couldn't get their child to this next step on their own. So there's shame. There's, why haven't I been able to do this? I should be able to do this. It's not that easy all the time. And I think with sleep too, is moms don't want to share that they're co-sleeping. And I always say there is nothing wrong with that if you're doing it because you're choosing to do it or you're doing it out of necessity, survival. So I just feel like there's shame attached to a lot of this, and we've all been there, we've all felt it. So don't be afraid to reach out, especially to someone who you feel that is open, approachable, and non-judgmental. I think that's so important.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with this podcast. We've had so many people reach out to want to come on, and we truly want that unbiased approach that these specialists are going to give, that they don't care whether you bottle feed, that you breastfeed. They don't care if you're co-sleeping, you slept trained right at 12 weeks or whenever it's advised to do so, like we want to have these people who believe that supporting the parents and their beliefs is the step, and that's the tool that's going to get them to where they want to be the best parents that they can be.
Absolutely. No, that is totally in line with how I feel too. Just to push your ideologies onto someone else, I think is so unfair because I would never want that myself. So why would I do that to someone else? But that's my perspective too. So I love that you ladies are like in line with that and providing all these resources to families. I've listened to some of your podcasts too, and I've had birth trauma more than once. So I just feel like it's so great what you're doing.
Yeah, and these are the conversations that we kind of want to keep having because, like, I look at you, I would never know you had birth trauma. And Dana and I were kind of talking about this. Like, most people who do, they don't stand on a rooftop and say, I had birth trauma. Who wants to listen to my story? Right? It's not something you carry and you put on your forehead, And I think it's really hard because even when I first met her, she was the first person who ever shared her story with me. And I think it's so powerful that women feel confident and they feel empowered to tell their story because people do care. People do want to hear it. And like it's amazing to see how so many moms go through such struggle and such trauma and they still become such great parents and great resources for the mom community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that so many of us do go through it, this birth trauma, and don't talk about it, or again, shame around sharing it, or feel like you're alone, or you hear your friends that have these like beautiful birth stories. I've never experienced that. Not to that effect. They've always been a surgery. every single one of them. So I just feel like everyone has their own story and their own journey, and not one's better than the other, you know?
Yes.
So I do. I think it's important to share too and talk about. And I never did. I never did the first time around.
It's so important though. It's part of, I think, the healing process for every woman, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, as you have more children or another child, you like you said before, like you feel more confident that you're kind of like in the mom club now. You feel like, oh, okay, I know what this is about. Like I can share because I know it can help someone else. But when you're first new in it and you don't know what you just went through to have this little baby and now you have to take care of another human and you're can't even walk, it is a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot to process.
It's a lot to process, especially too as the time goes, like, and you're starting to learn about all these things. Because I find that when I was first pregnant, nobody talked about birth trauma. They either just said vaginal birth, C-section birth. You're either having a planned birth or just like a emergency birth. That's bad. There's not really all these other things that could happen. But I do love that we've had this amazing conversation. And what would you say is the most rewarding part of your job? Like what is the thing that like kind of sets your soul on fire? Because I do know you're so passionate about what you do. Like I just love to know what's that one thing for you.
Yeah, I would say for sure when I see families that come to me that moms are crying for whatever reason, whatever they're going through, they're at their wits' end, their mental health, is suffering because of it. And getting these messages from moms, I mean, my coaching is very responsive, so I'm connected with these families all the time. When I see them reach their goals, or they're like, oh my God, I didn't think this would work and it did, or she's pooping on the toilet and the mom's like crying in a voice note, that just like makes me feel like it's my own child and I'm proud of them too. And I'm crying and sending a voice note back, like, I'm so excited for you. And I think because I've been on the other side of it with sleep and with toileting, that like I remember those feelings and it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I couldn't imagine doing anything else other than supporting families. I feel so blessed. I literally get to do this every day for a living, and it's amazing. Seeing them succeed is awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I truly appreciate you coming on today. And if you have anything like last minute you want to kind of share for our listeners, now's your time.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me too. I really appreciate the time and what you're doing. I think this is amazing, and parents and moms are so lucky to have this resource. And the one thing I would say to take away is be true to yourself, do what feels right for you. Don't let someone else pressure you into making choices that aren't aligned, and reach out for help. Reach out for help. Share your story. Connect with other moms.
Yes, I love all of those things. So we'll see you all next week.